Hey parents, if you have a twice exceptional student, regardless of whether they're in elementary, middle, or high school, are there any special considerations you should keep in your mind as you're starting the new school year? My name's Seth Perler. I'm an executive function coach based out of Boulder, Colorado. And I specialize in executive function in 2E. I work with a lot of 2E kids, and I really enjoy working with them. And I like that they're really complicated, interesting, neurodiverse. They have these atypical brains. I think they're pretty cool. And so I want to give you some of my key thoughts today. First of all, let's quickly cover a review of what 2E is, and then let's talk about one half of the exceptionalities, then the other half of the exceptionalities, how to support both halves of the exceptionalities, and then I have a little tip to end with. So first of all, what is 2E? So essentially, 2E means twice exceptional. 2E, twice exceptional. So it means that a learner or a student or that a human being, an adult, anybody, that a person has two exceptionalities, twice exceptionalities. And in the education world, an exceptionality is essentially considered someone who's not in the middle of the bell curve. There's somebody who's on different ends of a bell curve. So generally speaking, a twice exceptional student is generally considered someone who has one exceptionality in terms of that they're tag or gifted and talented or talented and gifted, or they're in some sort of gifted programming, and on the other side, they have a learning challenge or a learning disability or some other sort of disability or challenge. So generally speaking, that's what a 2E student is. However, there's often many exceptionalities, or somebody can be 3E or multi-exceptional. So I'm not going to get too into that. Just want to give a real basic idea here before we dive in. Now I'm going to talk about some of the challenges you find with 2E students, and I'm going to talk about some of the gifts you find with 2E students. So again, I'm speaking in generalities, but this is pretty spot on. Generally speaking, when a student has learning challenges, they usually, one of the things that they struggle with is executive function. What does that mean? It means that a student who has learning challenges often, whether or not there's a specific diagnosis of ADHD or Asperger's or ASD or autism or dyslexia or dyscalculia or sensory processing issues or whatever. Basically, that the child is often going, a 2E student will often struggle with execution, with output, with follow through, with getting things done. They tend to have a lot of lates or missings, or zeros or incomplete assignments, so they have to do a lot of test corrections. So they're generally struggling to get things done. They might struggle with using planners, with organization, with time management, with memory issues, not remembering or being aware of what's going on or what's being expected. So oftentimes they will struggle with executive function. Now, along with executive function comes two other big things that you should be aware of. One is emotional regulation. Oftentimes they might struggle with emotional regulation. They may be highly sensitive emotionally, and so in terms of learning to regulate the nervous system and regulate their emotions, if something pushes their buttons, or something feels stressful to them or threatening or unsafe to them, even if it's homework or a teacher or a class or perfectionism or whatever, that can affect them on an emotional level, and that's something that can become a barrier or a block or something that exacerbates the challenges. And the second thing that I want to talk about that's very related to that is resistance. So these kids are often resistant. They don't want you to help them. They don't want teachers to help them. They may be resistant to starting. That's called procrastination. They may be resistant to doing things that they're not interested in, or for a teacher that they don't feel connected to. But there's all kinds of resistance, ways that they have excuses or strategies to not do what needs to be done. So those are two particular problems that we often find with 2E kids who struggle with executive function. Now, in order to help support a student who has these challenges, there are three big things that we need. And then I'll talk about one other thing in particular. But I'm going to first talk about the three biggies. They basically need systems, mindsets, and habits and routines. I'll explain. Systems. So these students, in order to be successful students, they're 2E, all students, whether they're 2E or not, need systems. They need a good system for managing their papers. They need a good system for managing their backpack, a good system for planning or calendaring or for tracking their responsibilities. So they need systems, and there's other systems, but the gist is they need good systems that work for them, that are personalized to them, that are tailored to them. Oftentimes we give them cookie cutter systems, or we say, this is the latest and greatest system. This one should work for you because it's the latest and greatest, but that's not how it works. We need to tailor systems to individuals. Next thing they need is mindsets. And the mindset in particular that I talk about is they often have a resistance mindset. So they need a mindset that helps them break through the resistance, acknowledge the resistance that they have and their own stories and their own narratives and the things that hold them back, and have mindsets that say, I can do this. I can figure this out. I can get through this. I can ask for help. So they have to have mindsets that empower them to move forward. And then the third thing they need to have is habits and routines. And I know I lumped two things together, but habits and routines are very tied together, but they have to have good habits and routines. And often these kids have habits and routines that are not productive or that are not helping them to get the things done that they need to get done. Now, those were the three things that I said could help 2E kids, and I said that there's one more. The other thing that I want to talk about in terms of how to support your 2E kid with their challenges is communications with teachers or other staff. You might communicate in person, you might communicate via email, you might communicate via phone, but somehow you have to have open communication with the staff in a way where you feel heard and you feel like you can communicate the needs of your child and that they're taken seriously and they're really understood. So one thing that I recommend is advocacy emails, particularly at the beginning of the year. I'm not going to go too into that, but you have to start telling the teachers, hey, you know what, this is what you need to know about my kid, and keep them short and bulleted and to the point, and so that the teachers can absorb it. The teachers are busy, they're working very hard, they have a lot of students, so give them the benefit of the doubt, make it easy for them to learn something important about your child. But I'm a big believer in advocacy emails. The tone should be, hey, we're on the same team, I'm here to support you. Assume positive intent from the teacher. Assume that the teacher's got your back. Assume that the teacher has your kid's best interest in mind. But beware that there are teachers that don't get it, that won't get it, that can't get it, that just are stuck. And I deal with a good handful of these teachers with my clients every single year. Teachers who really can be condescending to the students, can have little digs with the students. So beware of that. But I always assume positive intent, because most teachers are really well-intentioned and really want to learn about 2E and executive function and how to best help your kid. Let's see. The next thing that I have in here in terms of communication is when it comes to in-school meetings. And let's say that you have a meeting, maybe it's a 504 or an RTI or an IEP meeting at the school. Go in and have an agenda. A lot of times those meetings are very short. A lot of times those meetings are packed with a lot of people. And a lot of times people in those meetings might be saying things that are a little bit off topic, or they're dealing with formalities and being nice and stuff. Look, you have very little time. Get to the point. Walk in there with your agenda. It may not be what their agenda is, but often they don't even have a clear agenda. And I've sat in so many of these meetings, and it drives me nuts when you walk out of a quick meeting or teachers are like, oh, I got to run. Everybody else, you can finish. I got to get to. And you really want to use that time so wisely. So walk in there with an agenda, give it to everybody. Even if you don't use it, at least they know what are the key 3 points that you want to cover or whatever. Keep it short, keep it simple, keep it to the most important things, at least for now. And finally, in terms of communication, when you're communicating with the school or the school counselors or the teachers about your child, and you have a gray, what I call a gray area kid, it might be really hard to communicate some stuff about your gray area kid. What a gray area kid is it's a kid who the teacher says, "Oh, well, I know they can do it. I've seen them do it before." And what happens is that the teacher just often doesn't see what's going on beneath the tip of the iceberg because it's not visibly evident as to what the challenge is. So it may look like the kid's just being lazy or willful or unmotivated or something like that. But there may be other things going on beneath the tip of the iceberg that the teacher does not see and that the teacher does not have a good understanding of for whatever reason. One biggie is a student who has attentional challenges and processing challenges, which happens to be a homework disaster in general. But those type of students can often get in trouble and be seen as that they're being willful. So next, I want to talk. So I talked about the challenges. Okay, so I talked a little bit about a 2E student, what their challenges are. It's often executive function, emotional regulation stuff, resistance stuff. They need systems, mindsets, habits, and routines, and you need to communicate and advocate for that kid with the teacher. Now, what about the gifts? We have a student who's twice exceptional. So on the other side, we have the gifts and the talents. What do we do about that? Because what we don't want to do is have our kid be in a classroom where they're really not challenged, they're really not engaged, and they're just going through the motions, or they're resisting going through the motions because it feels like busy work to them. Because if you have a gifted and talented child, there are certain things that are going to be characteristically different about that child in terms of their gifts. One, they'll often be highly sensitive. They might be highly sensitive emotionally. They might be highly sensitive intuitively. They might be highly sensitive in terms of their sensory systems, their physical senses. So that is something that can be a gift and a challenge, but they're taking in a lot of information. And your gifted child also often needs a compacted, or what's called a compacted or an accelerated curriculum, which means that your kiddo might learn something in an hour that takes other kids 4 hours, or your kiddo might learn something in 2 weeks that it takes other kids 6 weeks to learn. So they need an accelerated curriculum. But the point is that you want your child's gifts and talents to be addressed, just like you want their challenges to be addressed. And this can be very hard when you have a school who their curriculum has been designed for the middle of the bell curve, and you got someone who's an outlier in multiple ways. But when it comes to gifts, what I like to think about is this: you want to build upon your child's gifts. I lump a few words together because I think that they go together in the context of how I explain philosophically what we're trying to do for these kids. But your child is going to build a life and a career based on their gifts, their strengths, their passions, their interests, their talents, their curiosities. So that's what we want to develop. So we use the word gift or gifted and talented, but I like to use that group of words. We really want to build upon strengths, gifts, talents, passions, interests, curiosities, those sorts of things. We want to build those. We don't just want them to go to the class and leave the class. We definitely don't want them to be the tutor in the class for other kids who are struggling. That is not challenging your child. That is not educating them. And that can happen a lot with gifted kids. What we really want to hope for this kiddo, of course, we have to work on the challenges and the weaknesses, but we spend so much energy in our culture doing that and not enough energy on the strengths. So what we want to hope for with a great teacher, what we can hope for is a teacher who really understands how to creatively differentiate their curriculum for your child, how to personalize it, tailor it, how to help them feel challenged and engaged, and how to use content, process, and product. The content is what they're learning, the process is how they're learning it, and the product is how they show they're learning, that they have some choices and flexibility and differentiation in content, process, and product so that they can really be getting what they deserve, just like everybody deserves, that they should be able to have a good, enriching, challenging, wonderful education as well. Of course, it does not always happen this way. That's why I'm making this video. We have these challenges. I'm just trying to give you some ideas of things you should keep in the back of your head. You are not going to depend on the system to be able to give you all of these things because they will fall short. But you're going to hope that you get some awesome teachers that do it. And when they don't, you as the parent are going to want to fill in the gaps and really, like I said, build on the strengths and gifts and talents and interests and passions and things like that out of school. So in terms of how we're dealing with the strengths, so we're going to hope for a teacher who can differentiate. We're going to use the advocacy email the same way, communicate the strengths and something that works to help build your child's strengths. We're going to watch out for a lack of challenge, and we are going to do things outside of school that are enriching on top of it, and we still do our due diligence to make sure that they're having experiences, whether or not they're formal educational, that they're experiences that are engaging, that are developing those strengths. And then finally, after this whole thing, I talked a little bit about 2E. I talked about the challenges and the executive function, emotional regulation, resistance, systems, mindsets, routines, habits, communication with teachers, the gifts, the passions, the strengths, the talents, hoping for differentiation, advocating for the gifts too, watch out for not being engaged or challenged, and what to do outside of school. The last thing I want to talk about is the most important thing, and that's the relationship. Always remember that the most important thing is your relationship with your child, building healthier and healthier, more securely attached, relating and working through any healing or anything that you and your family and your child need to work through. It's totally okay. Everybody has stuff to work through, but working through it, actually doing it, and building the relationship and building more and more secure, what's called securely attached relationships, secure attachment. And working through any avoidant or anxious attachment. You can look those things up, and building that relationship. So this has been a long one. I've had a long day. We just did an Executive Function Online Summit, TFOS. It's no longer It's no longer live, but you can actually still check it out, and you can buy it if you want. It was amazing. But I'm pretty fried, but I want to end on that note. It's always the relationship is most important. Hopefully your child has a great relationship with the teachers. Obviously, if they're middle or high school, they probably have one or two where they don't, and they don't feel that healthy and securely attachment with a teacher. But what is healthy and secure attachment with you, the parent, or with anybody? What it is it's a relationship where the people in the relationship, where your child feels heard by you. They feel seen by you. They feel like you understand them, like you get them, like you've got their back. And that can be challenging, particularly with middle and high school kids. But that's always what we're working more and more towards. And that's the most important thing. So what you want to do, having said all this stuff about what to do, about the challenges and the gifts with your 2E kid, you want to plan in this semester and next semester and every semester. You want to plan in quality time with your child. Plan in time with your child to connect, to have fun, to not talk about school, to do things that you guys enjoy, to have the relationship that you want to be having with your child and build towards that more and more, to build the relationship. So plan in that time. Time goes by so fast. They grow up so fast. So planning in those things early, really blocking out time for it. Don't let the semester go by and then find out, wow, I really wish that we would have had more time together. So the other stuff with your 2E kids is important, but the most important thing is the quality time. That's all I got. My name is Seth Perler. I'm an executive function coach based out of Boulder, Colorado. I hope you're having a great day. If you haven't signed up, you can like this on YouTube. Leave a comment if you want. What suggestions do you have for starting the school year with 2E? Boy, my brain is fried. And I have a blog called sethperler.com where you can go and sign up. I send an update every Sunday. Take care.